Welcome back to the Rollout. I'm Jeff Pratt, and joining me as always is Trent Henrich. How's it going, Trent?
It's going really well, honestly. Football's in full swing. I'm just enjoying my time.
I know, me too, man. All right, we are going to jump straight into these picks for week two. We'll take a quick look at the records from last week, just kind of gloss over them because they don't really matter that much. Trent definitely did much better than me. He picked 11 out of the possible 16 games correct, and I only picked 7. Took a lot of upsets. Didn't end up working out for me. I'm still upset about those Lions and Bengals games where last minute plays kind of screwed me over, but it is what it is. Trent, are you ready to get into this week two picks?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. So we have first the Thursday night matchup, Bengals versus Browns. Who are you taking?
I'm gonna go with the upset. Why not? The thing is for me is the Browns have so much firepower and they just haven't been able to put it together. I think the Bengals should have won last week against the Chargers. They were up late. Um, they had a chance driving. They missed the field goal. There were many things, but I actually thought Joe Burrow was pretty good in this first game. And I think the jitters will be out of the system. They didn't have him throw a ton of passes last week. I think they'll give him more free range this week to throw some passes. And AJ Green looked pretty good. He didn't look like he wasn't his old self, but he wasn't that slow either. And they still have all those targets they had. And Joe Mixon had a terrible week. I think there's a lot to improve on after that week one loss. And I mean, here's the thing. It could be either I think it's either a Browns blowout or it's a Bengals close win. I don't think there's like a medium in there.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't have the best debut. Joe Mixon obviously had a poor showing on the ground. He fumbled once, and they still were that close to beating the Chargers. It was one offensive pass interference call away from getting that win. That being said, I am going to take the Browns. I do think that they bounce back from their horrible week one showing against the Ravens, which, props to you. You saw that coming. I did not. I didn't think the Ravens were going to come out that strong, and they definitely proved me wrong. I think that there's no chance Nick Chubb sees only 10 touch or 11 touches this week. They're going to establish the run early. I do think what we saw from Kareem Hunt last week is more of what we're going to see moving forward, around 10 to 15 touches per game. He definitely could honestly be their most reliable receiver. He caught their second most passes last week. Odell Beckham Jr. continues to not show up as he and Baker somehow still can't build a rapport. It kind of looks like Baker's just forcing him the ball. Jarvis Landry's definitely been the more reliable receiver there. That being said, I do think the Browns start to put it together this week, and I'll take them in week two. All right. So moving on to the next game, we have a battle of the mediocre teams. The Chicago Bears somehow got the win last week against the Detroit Lions, who just choked in the fourth quarter against the New York Giants, who might have the worst offensive line in football after seeing them get dismantled by TJ Watt and the Steelers last game. That being said, Trent, who are you taking?
The Bears did not deserve to win last week.
No, they didn't.
I mean,
DeAndre Swift dropped
Trubisky,
a wide open pass in the end zone. That just made me cry. And what a horrible start to your career in Detroit, by the way.
and I could be wrong. I don't think he dropped a pass in his senior season. I think I saw that stat somewhere.
He had incredible hands at Georgia. I know that. I don't know if that was a true stat, but I know he was an extremely reliable receiver.
Yeah, that was just a fluke loss for Lions, honestly. I mean, they really got outscored 20-0, I think, in the fourth quarter. That game should have been over with. That should not have been a Bears win. Trubisky pulled one out of left field, and he made it happen. I don't like Trubisky still. I'll take the Giants. And the Bears are pretty heavy favorites in this game. The line opened up at -5.5. Giants take them +5.5. Take a money line. Take Giants everything. Saquon is not going to have 6 yards again. I don't care what you say. I mean, the O-line was bad, but Pittsburgh defense is really good in general.
So here's the thing. I agree with everything you're saying. I am going to take the Bears just because, this is just another opportunity for me to get another matchup on you. And I do think the Giants O-line is the worst in football somehow after drafting 3 offensive linemen in the first 2 rounds this offseason. Austin Jackson just looked like a ghost last game against the Pittsburgh defense. And I think that the reason why I'm taking the Bears in this game is because you look at the Chicago D-line, it's pretty similar to the Steelers D-line. It consists of a lot of really solid players and then one superstar. Obviously, TJ Watt for the Steelers, Khalil Mack for the Bears. I think there's a good chance, he pressures Daniel Jones the entire game, really makes him struggle. Saquon Barkley, I'm rooting for him. I do think that he has a much better game this week. I'm predicting him to bounce back. But that's probably going to be more throughout the passing game. And we saw Daniel Jones check down to Saquon more willingly last game, which he didn't do in his rookie season last year, which is definitely a positive for Saquon fantasy owners moving forward. But yeah, I'm just going to take the Bears. There was some talk about Allen Robinson getting traded earlier this week, but he appears to have worked things out with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy and the Chicago organization. So I think they're a full go this week. Anthony Miller looked really strong, obviously caught a tremendous touchdown pass from Mitch Trubisky, who made a brilliant throw out of nowhere, as you were saying, Trent. I got the Bears in this game, but it's probably going to be a low-scoring, ugly affair.
Yeah, I'll throw this out there right now. I don't think I will pick the Bears once this season. I mean, maybe if they play the Redskins out on their schedule, but I will just, as long as Trubisky's quarterback, maybe when Foles is at quarterback, when Trubisky's at quarterback, I will never choose the Bears to win a game.
Fair enough. And I mean, Washington football team absolutely dominated the Eagles last week, so maybe they won't even be favorites in that game. But yeah,
True.
all right. Moving on, we have the LA Rams, who had a surprisingly strong showing against the Cowboys. Another unfortunate pick for both of us, Trent. They're against the Philadelphia Eagles, who looked absolutely horrible against Washington last week. Trent, who are you taking?
I am I wish I knew if Miles Sanders was going to play or not, because he's a big factor for me. I'm really high on him. The Rams looked good though. Dallas, I also don't think it's very good. So it's not. But also the Redskins aren't that good. Both I didn't like anything of those teams last week. I'll probably just go. I'll go with the Rams. I just think it's probably the safer pick, honestly. Malcolm Brown had a good game. No one really saw him getting all the touches, but he did do that in week 1. Miles Sanders may not be at full health, and the Eagles don't have many targets on offense. Rams have a pretty solid defense, so I'll just roll with the Rams, but I really don't like either team in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm going to roll with the Rams, too. I think they just have much more firepower, especially if Malcolm Brown can continue to be a dominant back like we saw in week 1, Trent. You were absolutely spot on there. He was pretty dominant, and obviously that made a lot of Cam Akers fantasy owners very upset seeing Brown go out there and play as well as he did. Cooper Kupp didn't even have a great game against the Cowboys, and they still won. Robert Woods, as I predicted, looked like the number 1 receiver for the Rams. Trent, you and I were both high on him by the end of the offseason there. He looks like he is the go-to guy for Jared Goff, but if Cooper Kupp can get more involved, I think that they can definitely beat this Eagles team.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on, we have a high-scoring affair, probably knowing how the Falcons have been playing recently. We have Atlanta taking on Dallas. Trent, who are you taking?
Atlanta, no question.
I'm with you. Yeah.
All right. I mean, I'm already not a fan of the Cowboys, and I actually like the Falcons a lot. I think they played one of the top 3 or 4 teams last week in Seattle, and they put up a decent fight. Their offense looked good. Their defense has always been banged up. Hopefully they can stay somewhat healthy this year. But I think that they're going to fare pretty damn well against the Cowboys. I think that Julio and Ridley are probably they're pretty close to the most dynamic wide receiver duo right now after seeing what they did week 1. They look really strong. And if Gurley can he did it right last week. If he continued doing, his role in the offense, they're going to be a good team.
I agree. The Falcons played really well. Unfortunately, Chris Carson got a little lucky and caught 2 touchdown passes. He didn't really have a good game besides that. And I think that was probably the difference maker between Seattle and Atlanta last week. And then you look at this Falcons offense. I mean, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage all caught 9 passes. Hayden Hurst didn't even play up to his potential. I think he has a bigger game against the Cowboys this week. And while I do like, from a fantasy perspective, a few Cowboys in this game, I mean, I like Ezekiel Elliott, obviously showcased that he's a top 3 running back in the league, as we both know. Last game, I like what CeeDee Lamb showed. Amari Cooper, as much as we love to hate on him, was pretty solid on the road. Michael Gallup looks like he might be demoted to the number 3 receiver already in that depth chart, so I'd probably stay away from him. But yeah, those three guys that we mentioned before him, don't mind playing him in a fantasy perspective in what should be a shootout this week, but I'm going to take the Falcons as well.
Yeah, definitely a high scoring affair. I'm with you there.
All right. Next up, we have another divisional matchup. The Panthers taking on the Buccaneers, who are probably going to be missing some players. Chris Godwin is currently in concussion protocol. He exhibited symptoms in practice yesterday. From what we've seen out of receivers who exhibit delayed symptoms, they usually miss a couple of weeks, which isn't something you want to hear as a Chris Godwin owner. As a fan of the Buccaneers, Mike Evans is obviously still recovering from a hamstring injury. Tom Brady didn't look great against New Orleans last week. That being said, Trent, are you still taking the Bucs over the Panthers?
Yeah, I still got to roll with the Bucks here. Brady didn't look like himself last week. 2 picks, pick six was there. Wasn't pretty. Saints are a very good defensive team, so they're no slouch. Nothing against them, but yeah, Bucks I think will probably roll pretty easily over the Panthers with or without Chris Godwin. Brady has plenty of options. Ronald Jones looked pretty good. Fournette didn't even get that many opportunities last week, but it was early. It's early for him. He just got added a week ago, so wasn't expecting much out of him in the first couple of weeks. But yeah, the Bucks just have way too much offense for the Panthers to compete with.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bucks as well. This is a pretty early game in the season, but I'd be willing to state this is a season-defining game for Tom Brady and this Tampa Bay team. How can they bounce back after a poor Week 1 showing with some adversity if Chris Godwin's out and Mike Evans is limited? How does Tom Brady respond after putting up a poor showing in his Tampa Bay debut? And as you were saying, Trent, if I'm a Ronald Jones fantasy owner, I am starting him with confidence this week after seeing what Josh Jacobs did to the Panthers last week. So that being said, I do think Carolina puts up a bit of a fight. Teddy Bridgewater didn't look great in his debut. He's got to be more willing to look to his number one guy and DJ Moore. Obviously, Curtis Samuel put up a solid showing. Robbie Anderson as well exploded last week. So this Carolina team is talented. That being said, I think Tampa Bay rolls over them as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn that Robbie Anderson is going to be probably see more touches than he usually does. I mean, he is a deep threat, but I think Teddy Bridgewater kind of likes to run the deep ball to him. It's kind of like I think Teddy Bridgewater had Cordell Patterson for like his rookie season when he was on the Vikings. I think he's a similar threat like him, so it could be an interesting duo there.
I agree completely. All right, moving on. We have the team, speaking of Robbie Anderson, where he was at for most of his career until this offseason. The Jets taking on the 49ers, who are pretty decimated themselves heading into this week. George Kittle obviously suffered a pretty serious knee sprain. When I saw that play live, Trent, I texted you and I said I thought he tore his ACL. It didn't look good. I don't know if you saw it, but it really looked ugly. Obviously, good for him that he didn't tear it. Probably any other player would have. George Kittle's just a really strong guy. Who knows how long he's going to be out for when he returns? Is he going to be limited? That being said, the 49ers brought in Mohamed Sanu. That their wide receiver core is still not great. Raheem Mostert broke off a big run, but besides that, wasn't amazing in their debut, and that's why they lost to the Cardinals. All of this being said, Trent, do the Jets have any chance in this game?
I don't think the Jets have a chance because of how good the 49ers defense is. I think it's going to be pretty low scoring. The Jets wouldn't have to score a lot, just like we saw last week with the Cardinals. They didn't have to score a ton to beat this 49ers team, especially now that, I don't think Kittle is going to play this week. Probably be smart for them to rest. They still don't have Debo. I mean, they still have like pretty slim targets on this offense. Having said that, though, I still got to go to the 49ers just based off their defense. If they lose to the Jets after making the Super Bowl week 2, I don't know. That wouldn't be pretty. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Niners.
Yeah, sounds about right. This definitely would not be a good look for the defending Super Bowl runner-ups if they lost to this New York Jets team. But we're both going Niners there. All right, Trent, moving on. We have the Denver Broncos taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, two really gritty, tough teams matching up. Obviously, Denver is still missing Von Miller out for the season, and the Steelers are going to be not at full force because James Conner's probably out as well with a high ankle sprain, although Benny Snell played tremendously in Conner's absence last week. I know you're high on both of these teams this year, Trent. Who are you taking?
I don't think James Conner being out is going to hurt them that much. I think Benny Snell is going to fill that role pretty well. James Conner may even lose some touches here on out if Benny Snell produces well. Having said that, I am going to go with the upset here and take the Broncos. I, I'm still, I'm not as high on you on Pittsburgh. Uh, they're good. I just don't know if Big Ben will continue to be the same. He looked good last week, and Juju had a very good game. But I think this young Broncos team has something to prove. Drew lost a guy with a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's going to come out. He didn't have a great week one against the Titans. They just didn't get much going there. But I'm going to go with the upset. I don't know. I mean, Steelers defense is good, but I like this Broncos offense.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers here, although I really want to take the Broncos. I just don't know how effective Cortland Sutton's going to be coming back from an AC joint sprain. And I think that actually hurt Jerry Jeudy, his absence, which is something that not a lot of people expected. We thought that him stepping up into the number one receiver role was going to be great. And in reality, his debut was just not amazing. He had a couple of pretty bad drops. Noah Fant looked incredible for that Broncos offense. And I'm high on Drew Lock. All of this being said, Benny Snell rushes hard. I think he steps in, doesn't miss a beat from last week. Pittsburgh's got a high-octane offense and a really tremendous defense. I think this is going to be a close game, but I'm going to go with Pittsburgh.
That's fair. Yep.
All right, moving on, Trent. We have your team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking on the Tennessee Titans. Trent, Gardner Minshew last week, 19 for 20. Does he put up a similar performance this week, and who are you taking in this matchup?
Dude, the stash has it working right now. You can't, dude. You cannot pick against the stash. I mean, I'm going with the Jags. You got to roll with him until he loses. But 19 for 20, he played well, and he spread the ball around for all 20 passes. I don't think there was a wide receiver with more than 3 or 4 catches, which was disappointing for D.J. Chark. But at the same time, I think when it comes down to it, when he needs to throw to a guy most, he will continue to go back to Chark. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Jags. I mean, there's a very good chance the Titans win. I mean, they're 9-point favorites. They're coming out for a really good season last year, but they didn't look amazing in week one. Stephen Gostkowski, oh, dude, his missed field goals was awful for the Titans last week. He went, 1 for 4 and missed an extra point or something like that. He did not look good. Give me the Jags. Roll with the stash.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with you there, as much as I hate to say it. I'm going with the Jaguars, too. I'm going to appear on another podcast after that where we do the same thing and pick our games. I was looking at it, Trent, especially picking against the spread. I'm going to go with Jacksonville. Gardner Minshew just looked amazing. Laviska Shenault Jr. really showcased his versatility, both as a receiver and a running back. What's his name? Jerome Robertson, or is it Jeremy Robinson?
I think it's James Robinson.
James Robinson. Sorry. Yeah, James Robinson looked pretty solid for them as their starting running back. DJ Chark didn't have the best showing, but he did catch a touchdown. I'm with you, Trent. I think that he gets more involved in their passing game this week. As long as Jacksonville can somewhat contain Derrick Henry and make Ryan Tannehill beat them through the air, which in my opinion, he hasn't showcased his ability to do so, I'm taking the Jags.
Yeah. And another thing to add on that, well, I'll do one for both teams. Titans, Corey Davis. I mean, he came back to life.
He always does this, though. He always has a game or two per year where he showcases his potential, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Corey Davis hype train's back," and then he just disappears for the rest of the season.
Yeah. The other note I was going to make is Jacksonville has to let Gardner Minshew throw the ball more this week. At 20 passes, I don't think they can win many games with him just throwing 20 passes. I mean, James Robinson did a great job with his carries, but I think Gardner needs to see at least 30 passes this week. And yes, he's going to have more than one incompletion. That's fine. They just need to let him, showcase his talents more.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. All right, moving on. We have the Detroit Lions, the biggest choke artists in the NFL as to date, versus the Green Bay Packers, who looked pretty solid in their win over the Vikings last week. Trent, I'll start this off. I'm going to take the Packers. One of these teams is trending up, and one of these teams is trending way down. So if you're picking the Lions, props to you for taking that risk. But it's hard to bet against the Packers, who looked really solid in week one.
Yeah, dude, that drop catch killed me last week by Swift. That made me sick. I will not be picking the Lions for a couple weeks here. Definitely gonna roll with the Packers. They look great. They really looked good last week. Devontae Adams had a huge game. Everything was clicking on offense. Defense was good, and they played a legit Vikings team, and they really killed them. And they put up in the 40s last week. So yeah, I'm gonna roll with the Packers as well.
All right, sounds good. Both picking Green Bay. All right, moving on. We have the Buffalo Bills, taking on the Miami Dolphins. I'll start here as well. I'm going to take the Bills in this game. I do think the Dolphins put up somewhat of a fight, but man, if you are Josh Allen, you have to be salivating over this matchup, looking at how Cam Newton tore apart that Miami defense on the ground last week. 75 yards, 2 touchdowns for Newton. Josh Allen's one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league. We're both really high on him this year from a fantasy perspective. From a real life perspective, starting to show his potential a little bit. He was pretty solid last week in their win. Obviously, they were playing the Jets, so not the best defensive matchup. But that being said, neither are the Dolphins. So Trent, I'm assuming you're taking the Bills here as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Bills too. And like you said, in a real life NFL perspective, Josh Allen I think had his first 300 plus passing game, which he hadn't done. So we know he can do it on the ground, and he did it on the ground like he usually does. But he finally started to air out the ball. And here's the thing: it wasn't his deep passes where his inaccuracy was a big issue last year. His average pass was like 7, 8 yards instead of 10 plus or something like that. They're having the drop downs, letting their wide receivers do the yards after catch. It was really working for them. Definitely gonna roll with Josh Allen and the Bills against the Dolphins this week.
Yeah, I agree. Stephon Diggs looks like a much welcomed asset to that offense for sure. All right, moving on. We have the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Indianapolis Colts, two teams that really didn't perform that well in their season opener. Trent, who are you taking?
I'm going with the Vikings, and they're underdogs in this game too. So
Really?
if you're a betting man, take their +3, or you want money line, take a money line. But yeah, I mean, at least when the line opened, Colts were 3-point favorites. I don't understand that. I mean, they just lost to the Jags, and everyone said the Jags were going to be awful. We knew the Packers were good, and Vikings tough divisional matchup there. I'm rolling with the Vikings. Kirk Cousins wasn't throwing the ball great last week, but Dalvin Cook was still good. Adam Thielen had a great game. I mean, their offense could not keep up with the Packers offense, which was as expected for me, honestly. So I'm going to go with the Vikings, and I think they could honestly beat the Colts by like 10 points.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. I was actually pretty surprised for, and I had checked out the spread that the Colts were favorites after losing Marlon Mack to an Achilles tear. I mean, from a backfield perspective for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor now gets to step in, be that number one option that fantasy owners were really looking forward to seeing him play this year. Nyheim Hines also looked tremendous, catching, I think, 8 passes last week. Philip Rivers, as we know, loves to utilize his running backs out of the backfield through the air. Look at what he did with Austin Eckler. So if you're a Nyheim Hines owner, that's definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. He's definitely worth starting, especially in PPR leagues. But from a real life perspective, Trent, I think that top to bottom, this Minnesota team is much more talented than the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm just going to roll with them as well.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. I just want to see if the line has changed. It's still Colts -3, a +148 money line for the Vikings. So definitely roll with the Vikings this week.
Wow. All right. Yeah. All right. Moving on. We have the Washington football team somehow 1-0 after just destroying the Philadelphia Eagles in the second half last week, taking on the Arizona Cardinals, who are coming off an upset over the San Francisco 49ers. I think, Trent, both you and I picked that win. I'll start off. I'm rolling with the Cardinals again. They're coming into this game really hot. They have to be feeling good about their offense, especially in a game where Kenyon Drake wasn't even that amazing, and they still got it done. Chase Edmonds was tremendous as a change of pace back for them. DeAndre Hopkins caught a career-high number of passes. He was incredible. The Kyler Murray to Newt connection already looks like it's going to be extremely dangerous this year. They have a talented receiving core behind DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald. So, yeah, I'm going to roll with the Cardinals this game.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, Washington did win last week against the banged up Eagles offense. They did. It was like 17-3 at half. I'm not really sure what happened with the Eagles in the second half last week, but the Cardinals look really good. Definitely gonna roll with the Cardinals here. Like you said, people were really worried about Hopkins because when he was on the Texans, he did so well because of how many targets and how big of a target share he had. I didn't think he was going to have that on the Cardinals, but I think he caught 12 of 14 balls last week. Like he saw a
I think he
lot of
had
looks.
14 catches
Was it
last
14
week.
catches
Yeah,
yet?
I think it was 14 for like 151 yards, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a high volume, and that's what people were worried about. And he had the high volume again. Kyler Murray can throw the ball around if he needs to, and he can run it himself. I mean, this Cardinals team is going to be legit this season.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yep, 14 catches for 151 yards and a 10.8 average for DeAndre Hopkins that last game. And it wasn't even like he broke off a bunch of big plays. His largest play was 33 yards. So he's going to be a consistently great fantasy asset for this Cardinals team moving forward. They just got that extension done. He's the new highest paid receiver in the league. I know some people saw that and thought he was overpaid. Definitely lived up to the contract, at least in week one.
I agree.
All right, moving forward, we have 4 games left. The first one is going to be the Ravens taking on a Houston Texans team that didn't look incredible in their debut against Kansas City, but didn't look as bad as they could have. I'll say that. Trent, who are you taking?
I think I'm going to go with the dog. I think I'm going to take the Texans.
All right.
I mean, I went with the Ravens last week, and they looked like they. I mean, Lamar looked like the best player in the league. Like, he looked like MVP Lamar again. Having said that, I don't think Deshaun Watson liked losing Week 1. I think him and Patrick Mahomes are going to have a big rivalry for years to come, and I just don't see the Texans starting off 0-2. It's really hard to fathom that, and they just need to get Cooks more involved in the offense. David Johnson looked good. Will Fuller had a few drop balls. It was the first game of the season, the first game, like Thursday Night Football. It was the first game, prime time. There's got to be some jitters. Playing one of the best teams. I mean, they have a tough schedule starting off Chiefs and then Ravens. That's tough. But I would like to see the upset here. So I'm going to roll with the Texans and see what happens.
All right, that's fair. You know, Trent, I picked against the Ravens last week and it severely backfired. So I'm not making the same mistake this week. I'm taking Baltimore as much as I would love to see them lose. Honestly, I'd like to see the Texans win this game. I like the players that they have. Will Fuller was incredible as Deshaun Watson's number one option. And, you know, Trent, you were spot on when you said that they need to get Brandon Cooks more involved. Obviously, he's still a bit limited with a quad injury that they've been maintaining or working maintenance on throughout this season. So if he's able to play more up to his full potential, that's obviously a big difference maker for them. That being said, hard to pick against Baltimore, who looked so dominant against the Browns last week. So I'm going to go with them.
That's fair.
All right, moving on. We have a matchup that I think could be sneakily tight. The Kansas City Chiefs taking on the LA Chargers. Obviously, this has actually been a pretty intense rivalry over the last couple of years. The Chargers have historically given the Chiefs some trouble. They have a new quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. Didn't look tremendous in his Week 1 win over the Cincinnati Bengals, but still was able to get the job done. Trent, who are you taking?
Chiefs all the way. I really don't think it's going to be sneakily close. I think the Chiefs win by probably 2 touchdowns, honestly. Maybe it's close in the first half, but the Chiefs will ultimately pull away in this game. I mean, they are too much to handle for this Chargers team, and that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to agree with you there. I do think it's going to be closer than you think, but by the end of the game, Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs offense is just, as you said, too much for the Chargers to handle. I do hope that the Chargers are able to get Austin Eckler more involved out of the backfield through the passing game, same as Keenan Allen. And I think this is a matchup that Hunter Henry as well could excel in. The Chiefs haven't been historically great at picking up tight ends in the secondary. That being said, still taking Kansas City by a mile in this game.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to our final 2 matchups. We have our hometown New England Patriots taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Trent, your hometown team against the team that you might be the highest on in the NFL right now. Who are you taking?
I got to go with the Seahawks, man. I wish I could go with the Pats and Cam Newton, but I think the Seahawks are going to be too much. Also, I think Cam Newton's not going to have as much room to run as he did against the Dolphins. That's not realistic for this defense he's playing. I think the Seahawks and Russell Wilson come out strong. They play a full game, and I mean the spread's 4. It's probably a 6-point game by the end of it, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I just think they're too much for the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm actually going to disagree with you there. You know, I have to pick my matchups to take my advantage on you, and I'm going to take the hometown Patriots. Cam Newton looked amazing last week. I do think that they're going to need to open him up to the passing game if they're going to win this game. Chris Carson, I think we shut him down. I think that Stephon Gilmore gives whoever he's on trouble, whether it's Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf. Russell Wilson's going to have to beat the Patriots through the air this game, which, as we know, he's more than capable of doing. But I'm going to take the upset. I think New England looked pretty good this week, and they're only going to continue to get better as Cam Newton gets more used to this offense.
Hey, what's nice about this is if the Pats win, sweet, they win. If Seahawks win, well, I picked them, so I guess I'm upset, but there's a little cherry on top to that.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. The final matchup of the week, Monday night, New Orleans Saints taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, who were able to get the job done against the Carolina Panthers. Josh Jacobs looked like the best running back in the league, as you and I predicted he was going to be, or not the best, but we thought he was going to have a great season, and he's lived up to the hype so far. That being said, Trent, any chance the Saints are losing this game?
No, there's no chance. I mean, Saints are -6. It shouldn't be close. It just shouldn't be. The Saints team is. I mean, we're high on Josh Jacobs, but we're higher on the Saints. I mean, we really think the Saints could go all the way this season, and they looked that good week one. As long as their team stays healthy. To be fair, Michael Thomas is going to be out, but he also wasn't a huge factor when he was healthy the other week. So, like, that's how many targets they have. Emmanuel Sanders looked good. Jared Cook looked good. Kamara had a great game. I mean, their defense is good. I mean, just roll with the Saints.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I'm going to take the Saints as well, pretty much for the same reasons. Michael Thomas, as you said, he's out, but he was pretty much a non-factor against Tampa Bay. Emmanuel Sanders and Jared Cook are set to handle a larger share of targets for sure heading into this week. So if you're a fantasy owner of either of those guys, I would start them with confidence. But from a real life perspective, hard to pick against the Saints, who I think Trent and I both have as Super Bowl favorites this year.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with you there.
All right, Trent. So that's going to wrap up this episode of the Rollout. Obviously, you have a 4-game advantage on me heading into this week. You picked a couple of upsets this week. I kind of rolled more with the chalk. So we are going to see how that works out for both of us when we catch up with you guys next week to continue the series for week 3. Stay safe out there, everyone, and enjoy some football.